It was a cold, rainy night in the city. The streets were almost empty, and the sound of raindrops filled the silence. Streetlights flickered weakly, and the smell of wet earth mixed with the distant aroma of food. Under one of those flickering lights stood a young girl named Mia. Her clothes were old and wet, and her small hands were shaking from the cold. She held a broken umbrella and looked through the window of a fancy restaurant. Inside, people were laughing, eating, and enjoying the warmth. Her stomach growled softly. She hadn't eaten anything all day. Still, she smiled faintly as she watched others eat. It was as if she found peace just by seeing someone else's happiness. Inside the restaurant, a man named Adrian Cole sat alone at a corner table. He was a millionaire, young, handsome, and powerful. Everyone in the restaurant knew him. The waiters moved quickly around him, trying to please him. But Adrian looked tired, bored, and lonely. His eyes had everything money could buy, but nothing that could make him feel alive. When Adrian finished his dinner, he stood up, ready to leave. His table was full of leftover food, untouched bread, half a steak, and a slice of chocolate cake. As he stepped outside, the cold air touched his face. He pulled out his car keys, but then he heard a soft voice behind him. "Excuse me, sir. May I have your leftovers?" He turned slowly. The girl was standing there, her eyes wide but gentle. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from hunger and humility. For a moment, Adrian said nothing. His eyes met hers, and something strange happened inside him. He had seen hundreds of beggars before, but this girl, there was something different. Her eyes weren't just sad, they were familiar. He frowned slightly, trying to remember. Where had he seen those eyes before? The rain fell harder, and Mia lowered her head, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to bother you," she whispered. She started to walk away, but Adrian stopped her. "Wait," he said firmly. "You're hungry, aren't you?" She didn't answer. She just nodded softly, shivering under the rain. "Come inside," he said. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Inside? But I can't. I don't belong there." "Yes, you do. Come," Adrian insisted. Everyone in the restaurant turned to look when he walked in again with her. The waiters froze. People whispered, "Who is she? Why is Mr. Cole bringing a street girl inside?" Adrian didn't care. He pointed to the same table and said, "Bring the menu." Mia stood there awkwardly, afraid to sit. "Sir, please, I only wanted your leftovers. I can't pay for anything." Adrian gave her a kind smile. "You don't have to. Tonight, you're my guest." She slowly sat down. Her hands were still trembling, and her eyes looked around the room filled with expensive lights and soft music. She had never seen a place like this in her life. When the food came, she ate quietly, taking small bites. Adrian watched her every movement, every expression. She ate as if each bite was precious. After a while, she looked up and said softly, "Thank you, sir. You are very kind." Adrian nodded but kept staring. There was something about her face, something hidden deep in his memory. "Have we met before?" he asked. Mia paused, a bit confused. "I don't think so, sir." Adrian leaned back in his chair, still unsure. "Maybe not," he said slowly, "but I feel like I've seen you somewhere. Long ago." The rain outside grew heavier. The sound of thunder echoed in the distance. The camera zoomed slowly on Adrian's thoughtful eyes, then on Mia's tired, innocent face. Something deep and powerful was about to connect them. Neither of them knew it yet. But this small act, sharing food, was about to change both their lives forever, to be continued. The soft sound of rain still touched the glass windows of the restaurant. Inside, the golden lights made everything warm and beautiful. Yet something unusual was happening at one table. A rich man and a poor girl were sharing dinner. Mia sat nervously, her eyes low, her hands tight around the edge of her chair. The waiters glanced at her from a distance, confused and whispering among themselves. No one could understand why Mr. Adrian Cole, the famous millionaire, proud a street girl inside his world of luxury. But Adrian didn't care what they thought. For the first time in years, he felt something real, something human. He watched her take each bite slowly, carefully, as if the food might disappear if she ate too fast. When she lifted the spoon, her fingers shook, not from fear, but from the cold she had carried in her bones for too long. "Is it good?" Adrian asked gently. Mia nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "It's the best food I've ever had," she said softly. Adrian smiled too, but there was sadness in his eyes. He leaned forward. "What's your name?" "Mia," she replied. "Just Mia? Do you live around here?" She hesitated. "I don't really live anywhere, sir." "Sleep near the old bridge, when it's not too cold." Adrian's face tightened. He didn't expect that answer. The waiter brought a cup of hot chocolate. Adrian pushed it gently toward her. "Drink this. It'll warm you up." Mia stared at the cup for a second, then said softly, "You don't have to do this, sir. I'm used to hunger." "No one should be used to hunger," Adrian said. She looked up at him then, really looked. For the first time, she saw that behind his clean suit and calm face, there was sadness too. Not the kind that comes from poverty, but the kind that comes from loneliness. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Outside, the rain slowly stopped. Then Adrian asked, "Tell me something, Mia. You're young. You could be studying, working, doing anything. What happened?" Mia took a deep breath. Her eyes filled with memories she didn't want to speak. "I used to work in a small bakery. I loved baking. My dream was to open my own shop one day. What changed?" "My parents died when I was 17, she said quietly. "I had no one. The bakery closed. I worked here and there, cleaning, selling flowers, but the money was never enough. Then one winter, I lost my job. Since then, it's been the streets." Adrian listened without interrupting. His hands slowly curled into a fist under the table. Mia continued, her voice trembling. "I try to help others sometimes. Once, I gave my only piece of bread to a little boy who was lost and crying. He said his name was Adrian." Her words froze the air between them. Adrian looked at her sharply. "What did you say?" She blinked. "Adrian. I don't know his last name." It was years ago. His mind started racing. A small, blurry memory came back a cold day. A little boy lost near a market, crying until a kind girl offered him bread. She had warm eyes, just like this girl. Could it be her? He leaned back slowly, trying to stay calm. "That's quite a story," he said. "Do you still believe in helping others, even after all the pain you've been through?" Mia smiled faintly. "Yes, sir. Kindness doesn't need money. It just needs a heart." Adrian couldn't speak for a moment. Something in his chest tightened. He looked at her again, really looked. The broken shoes, the tired eyes, the quiet strength. Outside, the clouds cleared, and a faint moonlight entered the restaurant window. It fell softly on Mia's face. Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. But behind that peace, a question burned quietly in his mind. Was this the same girl who once saved me when I was lost? He didn't know yet. But deep inside, something told him this meeting was not an accident. It was destiny to be continued. That night, when Adrian finally returned home, the city was quiet. The sound of the rain had stopped, but the memory of that dinner stayed in his mind like an echo he couldn't silence. He removed his coat, loosened his tie, and sat in his dimly lit study. The room was full of expensive things, paintings, awards, books, but it all felt empty. He poured himself a glass of water and stared at his reflection in the window. He could still see her face there, Mia, the way she looked when she said the name Adrian. He whispered to himself. Could she really be the same girl from back then? He shook his head, trying to dismiss the thought, but something deep inside refused to let go. He walked to an old wooden box on the shelf. It was covered in dust. He hadn't opened it in years. Inside were small pieces of his childhood. A broken toy car, a paper airplane, and an old photograph of a boy and a young girl standing beside a food cart. The girl was handing him a piece of bread. The boy's face was full of tears, but the girl smiled, warm and kind. Adrian's hand trembled as he held the photo closer. Her face was blurry, but the eyes, Those gentle, hopeful eyes looked exactly like Mia's. He whispered again, "It is her." The next morning, Adrian didn't go to work. He couldn't. His thoughts were restless. He wanted to see her again, to ask her, to be sure. He got into his car and drove to the old bridge she had mentioned. The place was gray and empty. A few street dogs wandered nearby. Under the bridge, some people were sleeping on cardboard sheets. Adrian walked slowly among them, searching for that familiar face. Then he saw her sitting by a small fire, her hands wrapped around a tin cup. Her clothes were still wet from last night, but she was smiling, talking to an old man beside her, sharing her drink. Even now, with nothing, she was giving something. Adrian's chest tightened. He stepped closer. "Mia," he called softly. She looked up, surprised. "Sir? You came here?" "Yes," he said, smiling faintly. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." She looked embarrassed. "You shouldn't be here, sir. This place isn't for people like you." Adrian shook his head. "Kindness doesn't belong to any one class, Mia. I owe you something. From long ago." She frowned, confused. "Oh, me? No, sir. You already helped me more than anyone ever has." Adrian pulled out the photo from his pocket and handed it to her. "Do you remember this?" Mia's hands froze as she took it. Her eyes widened, then filled with tears. She touched the photo with trembling fingers. This was when I was 16, she whispered. That boy. He was crying near the bakery. He was lost and hungry. I gave him bread." Adrian nodded slowly. "That boy was me." Mia's lips parted, but no words came out. She just stared at him, shocked, tears falling silently down her face. Adrian continued softly, "You helped me when no one else would. I never forgot that day. I was scared, alone, and you smiled and said, 'Everything will be fine.' I didn't even know your name back then." Mia covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "I can't believe this. I thought you'd forgotten." "You were just a child. I remembered your kindness," Adrian said. "It made me want to become someone better. Maybe that's why fate brought us together again." For a few moments, neither spoke. The city noises faded, leaving only the sound of wind moving under the bridge. "Finally," Mia said quietly, "maybe life really does give back what you give to others." Adrian nodded. "Yes, and now it's my turn." He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small envelope. Inside was a card, a job offer at his company. Mia looked at it in disbelief. I can't accept this." Adrian smiled gently. "You gave a lost boy bread when you had nothing. Let me give you a chance when you have nothing. It's only fair." Tears streamed down Mia's cheeks. For the first time in years, she felt hope. Adrian extended his hand. "Come with me, Mia. Let's start a new chapter." She hesitated for a moment, then took his hand as they walked away from the cold bridge. The camera followed their shadows, one from light, one from darkness, finally walking toward the same dawn. To be continued. Days passed, and life began to change slowly. For the first time in years, Mia had a real bed to sleep on, warm food to eat, and clean clothes to wear. Adrian had kept his promise. He gave her a small job at his company as an assistant in the bakery department. On her first day, Mia stood nervously near the office gate. Everyone looked at her curiously. Some smiled kindly, others whispered behind her back, "She's the one Mr. Cole brought from the streets." One employee said quietly, "Why her? What's so special about her?" Another replied Mia heard them, but stayed silent. She had been through worse. She wasn't here to prove anything. She was here to start over. When Adrian saw her from his glass cabin, he smiled proudly. He remembered the scared girl who once asked for leftovers. Now she stood strong, with her hair tied neatly and hope shining in her eyes. At lunch, Adrian joined her in the cafeteria. People stared again, but he didn't care. "How's your first day?" he asked. Mia smiled shyly. "It feels strange, sir. Everyone here looks so smart." "I'm afraid I'll make a mistake." Adrian chuckled. "Mistakes are how we learn, Mia. You're doing just fine." She nodded. "Thank you, sir, for everything. You've changed my life." Adrian looked at her with a gentle expression. No, Mia, you changed mine first, remember? Their eyes met for a moment. It was quiet, peaceful, almost like they were two old souls finding each other again. That night, when Adrian returned home, something kept him restless. He sat by his desk, looking again at that old photograph. The little girl's face smiled up at him, innocent and kind. He whispered, "Why do I still feel like there's something I don't know?" He opened an old diary from his childhood. Inside, there was a page where his mother had written, "The girl who helped you that day. Her name was Mia Harper. Her parents worked at our bakery before we moved away." Adrian's eyes widened. Her parents worked for my family? He turned the page and found another note. Her father lost his job after the bakery burned down. He never recovered. Adrian's hands trembled. He closed the diary and stared into space. His heart filled with guilt. His family's bakery fire, it had destroyed her father's work and her childhood. He whispered to himself, all this time, my success was built on her loss. The next morning, Adrian couldn't look at Mia the same way. He watched her from his office window as she arranged bakery samples, laughing with the staff. Her happiness made his guilt heavier. Later that day, he called her into his office. "Mia," he began softly, "do you remember your parents working in a bakery before the fire?" Her face changed. She looked down slowly. "Yes, that bakery was our whole life. After it burned down, my father got sick. And everything went wrong after that." Adrian hesitated, then said quietly, "That bakery belonged to my father." Mia froze. Silence filled the room. She looked at him, her eyes full of disbelief. "What? What did you say?" Adrian nodded, his voice shaking. "I didn't know until last night. My family owned it. We left the city after the fire. I never knew your father lost everything because of it." Mia's lips trembled. She turned away, tears forming in her eyes. "All these years I thought fate was just cruel. I never imagined. You were part of it." Adrian stepped forward, guilt heavy in his voice. "Mia, I was a child. I didn't know. But please, let me fix what my family broke." She wiped her tears but didn't look at him. "You already gave me a new life, sir. But now, I don't know what to feel." Adrian's heart ached. "Feel whatever you need to. But don't walk away, Mia. Please." She stayed silent for a long time, then finally said, "I need some time." She left the office. Adrian stood there, staring at the closed door. The past he thought was gone had come back, not to punish him, but to test whether his kindness was real. Outside, dark clouds began to gather again. The storm wasn't over yet, it had just begun. To be continued. For 2 long days, Mia didn't come to work. The office felt strangely quiet without her gentle smile and soft good morning. Adrian noticed her empty desk every time he passed by. The smell of fresh bread from the bakery floor wasn't the same anymore. He sat in his office, staring at the rain outside. The storm had returned heavy and cold, just like the guilt in his heart. He replayed her words again and again. "I don't know what to feel." He couldn't blame her. He had unknowingly carried the shadow of the same fire that ruined her family's life. Fate was cruel, yes, but maybe fate also gave him a second chance to make things right. That night, Adrian decided he wouldn't wait anymore. He took his coat, grabbed his car keys, and drove toward the old bridge. The streets were almost empty. The rain fell harder as he crossed the narrow lanes. Finally, he saw a small figure sitting near the same fire pit as before. It was Mia, wrapped in a thin blanket, her hair wet from the rain. She looked tired but peaceful, staring into the flickering flame like she was searching for answers. Adrian stepped closer, his shoes splashing in puddles. "Mia," he called softly. She turned, surprised. Her eyes widened. "Sir, what are you doing here?" "I came to find you," he said. "You didn't come to work." Mia looked down. "I needed some time to think." Adrian nodded, his voice gentle. "I understand. But please, hear me out." He sat beside her on the cold ground. The firelight flickered across their faces. "Mia," he began, "my family made mistakes. We caused pain we didn't even see. But I'm not my father, and you're not the same helpless girl anymore. You helped me once when I had nothing. Let me do the same now, not out of pity, but because you deserve it." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "You already did, sir. You gave me food, a job, respect. That's more than I ever dreamed." Adrian shook his head. "No, Mia, that was only the start. I've been thinking about your dream, the bakery. You once said you wanted your own shop, right?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. But that dream died long ago." Adrian reached into his coat and pulled out a small folder. He handed it to her. Inside were documents, a lease, business papers, and a check. Mia's hands trembled. "What is this?" "It's the shop near the old market, the same place where your father worked. I bought it back. It's yours now." Her lips parted in shock. No, sir, this can't be real." "It is," Adrian said softly. "You'll run it. I'll invest in it. It will be called Mia's Miracle Bakery." Tears rolled down her face. She covered her mouth, unable to speak. "You don't have to thank me," he continued. "This isn't charity, Mia. This is a promise that the past can be rewritten with kindness." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled between them, the rain whispering softly on the metal roof above. Finally, Mia whispered, "When I gave that little boy bread years ago, I never thought he'd return to give me a whole life in return." Adrian smiled faintly. "And I never thought the girl who saved me would teach me what kindness really means." She looked at him, her eyes glowing with tears and gratitude. "You've given me back my dreams, sir. That's the real miracle." He stood up and reached out his hand. "Then let's go make that miracle happen." Mia took his hand slowly. As they walked away from the fire, the camera followed their footsteps through the rain. Two souls connected by fate, walking toward a new dawn. The city lights shimmered in the puddles. Behind them, the small fire went out, but ahead, a brighter one had just begun to burn. A voice echoed softly in the background. "Sometimes miracles don't fall from the sky. They walk beside us, disguised as people who care." To be continued. A few months later, the city looked different, or maybe it was Mia who had changed. The same streets that once ignored her now smiled when she walked past. The same people who pitied her now greeted her with respect. On a bright morning, the golden signboard of a small shop shined proudly under the sun, Mia's Miracle Bakery. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon filled the air. Warm laughter echoed from inside as customers crowded the counters. Mia stood behind the display, wearing a clean white apron, her hair neatly tied back, her eyes full of joy and purpose. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving, she was living. Adrian entered quietly, watching her from the doorway. He didn't say anything at first. He just smiled, proud and peaceful. Seeing her happy gave him more satisfaction than any business deal ever had. When Mia noticed him, her face lit up. "Sir, you came." "Of course," Adrian said, walking in. "I wouldn't miss this for the world." She handed him a small pastry, a warm butter croissant with chocolate filling. "Your favorite," she said with a playful smile. He took a bite and laughed softly. "You remembered, how could I forget?" she said. "This bakery exists because of you." Adrian shook his head. "No, Mia, it exists because of you. You earned this. You made it happen." She looked around the shop, watching the customers enjoy her food. "Sometimes," she said softly, "I still can't believe it's real. Every morning, I wake up thinking I'm dreaming." Adrian looked at her with gentle eyes. "Dreams become real when you refuse to give up. You taught me that." Later that afternoon, when the crowd slowed down, Mia stepped outside. Across the street, she noticed a little boy sitting alone on the curb, crying softly. His clothes were dirty, his hands cold. Without a second thought, she walked over and knelt beside him. "Hey," she said kindly, "are you okay?" The boy sniffed. "I'm hungry," Mia smiled gently. "Come with me." She took his hand and led him into the bakery. The warm air wrapped around him like a hug. She gave him a small loaf of bread and a cup of milk. The boy's eyes widened. "Thank you, miss." Mia smiled. "No need to thank me. Just promise me one thing." "What?" the boy asked. "When you grow up and meet someone who needs help, don't turn away." He nodded, still eating, and Mia's heart filled with emotion. It felt like life had come full circle. She was now the one giving the bread. Just like she once did to a lost boy named Adrian. Adrian watched quietly from the counter. There was pride in his eyes, but also something deeper. Something that words couldn't explain. When the boy left, Adrian said softly, "You've become the person I always hoped to be." Mia laughed lightly. "No, sir. I just learned from you." They stood in silence for a moment, the sound of soft music playing in the background. Then Adrian said, "You know, I've been thinking about expanding the bakery. Maybe open more branches. You could manage them all." Mia's eyes widened. "Me? Managing? Why not?" Adrian smiled. "You've got heart, courage, and the best bread in the city." Mia laughed, shaking her head. "You never stop surprising me." Adrian looked at her warmly. "And you never stop inspiring me." As the sun began to set, golden light filled the bakery. The last customers left, and the closed sign hung on the door. Mia stood at the window watching people pass by. She remembered the night she had spent outside restaurants, cold and hungry. Now, she stood on the other side of the glass, strong, proud, and full of hope. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Thank you, life." "For bringing him back," Adrian heard her and replied gently. "Sometimes miracles don't just happen. We create them. One act of kindness at a time." The camera zoomed out slowly. Mia and Adrian standing together inside the warm bakery, surrounded by golden light, a picture of peace, faith, and second chances. Narration fades in with soft music. Kindness never dies. It travels from one heart to another until the world becomes a little brighter. The screen fades to black. Text appears, the END, a story inspired by kindness and hope.